Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Before we get started, I just want to say thank you all so very much for the reception on the last few videos. It's been pretty crazy to see how much everyone's been enjoying them, especially the Mothman video, which at the time of recording this, I think I just checked it not too long ago, it was at 93 views. It's crazy to me that it's that close to 100, and the reception of all these videos I've put out so far has seemed really good, and I appreciate it so much. And I really hope you all enjoy today's video, because we're going to be talking about one of my favorite stories within... I can't really say. I wanted to say stuff about it, but if I say too much, it's kind of gonna spoil the story. But it is a true story, so it's going to be a lot of fun. I really, once again, I really appreciate everything that you all have said in the comments. How many of you have liked, how many of you have subscribed. I'm having a ton of fun with this. I'm really trying to make this kind of like a second job, which is something I talked about in the Mothman video when I put that one out. I recently bought a tablet to work on scripts when I'm not at home. Mostly I've been working on them at lunch at my actual job, and it's been a lot of fun. It gives me more time to work on scripts, so I don't have to limit myself on how much work I can really do on them and all that. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and once again, I hope you all enjoy the video. Oh, and one more quick thing before we get started with this story. Hopefully now, I noticed in the last few videos, and some people pointed it out to me, about how much the camera shakes. This desk that I have right now is not very sturdy, and the mount for the camera is attached to the desk. I moved the mount for the camera though. It's attached to something nearby the desk, so hopefully it shouldn't shake as much. I'm really sorry about that in the last few videos. I know some people said it was kind of nauseating to look at. It's shaking around a lot, and I actually do agree. I watched back a couple of the parts, and when I was like moving around or touch the desk or anything, the camera would just start shaking around, and it is kind of annoying to look at. So I'm sorry about that, but hopefully now it shouldn't shake as much. This story starts in the year of 1986 in the town of Pepperell, Massachusetts. Now hopefully I said that town right. But our story starts there with the Andrews family. Now the Andrews family consisted of Brian Andrews, his daughter Annie, his daughters Annie and Jessica, Annie who was 15 and Jessica who was 8 years old. Now recently this whole family was left devastated by the loss of Brian's wife and the daughter's mother due to a long battle with cancer. At this point when she died, Brian and her, also I'm going to say her because her name in the story was never mentioned, I guess for privacy reasons. But at this time Brian and his wife were both working to support the family. So when she died, a lot of pressure was put on Brian to support both of his daughters. So he was working almost double what he had before, and it was hardly ever home when the daughters were home. So they had a slight rift open between them, which is not crazy. This something like that, dying to cancer and having so much stress put on the entire family, will cause some tension. What's interesting though is the fact that the two girls, even despite their age gap, remember Annie is 15 and Jessica is 8 years old. It's a pretty significant little age difference there, but both of them actually grew closer together than they were before, probably due to the loss of their mother. Now, the death of someone usually leaves a lot of people grieving, especially the immediate family of the person. And typically grief comes in many different forms, and usually everyone deals with it in about the exact, in their own way, pretty much. They all deal with their own exact reasonings and stuff like that. But unfortunately for Brian, since he had so much responsibility over these two girls, you know, they were both going to school at the time, he had to pick up a lot more shifts, like I said earlier, so he was working double the time and was hardly ever home. But his daughters, however, they thought of a different way of grief. With Brian hardly ever being home and the rift between them growing even bigger and tensions growing high, they wanted answers on what they should do. And they thought, who better to ask than their mother? And what I mean by this is that both the daughters decided the best course of action to ask their mother of what to do would be to go in the basement of their home and perform a seance with a Ouija board to try and contact their mother's spirit. Unfortunately, despite doing everything they thought they should do, the seance didn't lead to anything. No messages ever came through the board, and from what they heard or saw, their mother never appeared in any way. This obviously left both the girls pretty devastated and disheartened on what exactly to do. So they picked up all their things from the basement and headed upstairs to go to bed for the night. But that's when they heard some knocking. And what I mean by there was knocking, I mean, if you're big in the paranormal world like I am, you probably already know, but if you don't know, knocking is probably one of the most common forms of ghost activity, poltergeist activity. So when the girls got to their room and were settling down for bed, they started to hear some sort of knocking on the wall. This time Brian was not present at the home. He was still at work. It was just the girls at the house. So when they heard the knocking, they knew it wasn't their father, so they assumed it could only be their mother. So they started asking the apparition, whatever was knocking, they started asking it questions. And when I say they're asking it questions, I think what this is alluding to, from every source I used, it didn't explain very well what they meant by this, but they said they started asking the knocking questions, and it would like return an answer. What I assume by that is like it's one of those things like knock once for yes, knock twice for no kind of things. Like I said, it wasn't very descriptive, but that's the only way I could assume that they're saying the knocking was answering their questions. The girls stated after the fact that the knocking that they heard continued for multiple nights, and the first couple nights, they said the knocking would only happen when they asked questions. But then after about the third or fourth night, the knocking would just randomly happen throughout the house. And this is when the girls decided maybe it was the best time to tell Brian, because even from the first night, the girls didn't tell their father. They just wanted to talk to their mother. They were so excited to talk to their mother. When they did tell Brian, he didn't believe their story at all. He thought they were just making it up, and this was some weird way for them to grieve their mother, that they had just made it all up in their head, basically imagined it, that their mother had come back. But it would soon get much weirder than just knocking. From all the sources I used, it said the knocking continued for the first couple months of activity. But then it started to escalate to the point that items in the house would either be moved or disappear altogether. One story was about Brian, who came home with a stack of papers from his work, and he had laid them on the coffee table in the living room of the home. And the next morning he woke up, he found the papers scattered all over the floor of the home. And he asked the girls what had happened, because he just assumed that they had done it, because, I mean, they're pretty young girls still. I wouldn't put it past them to make a mess and maybe not clean it up. So he asked them about it. And the girls both said that the ghost had done it, the spirit had done it. And unsurprisingly, Brian didn't believe this story and blamed it both on them and told them to stop making up the story about a ghost in the house. Then it went even further. The girls started to notice around the house the furniture in the home was being moved ever so slightly. Some things, they said, seemed to only move by about an inch or two every night, but some things were in completely different spots. Like some of the chairs in the kitchen would be in a completely different room. But like even the couch, like stuff like the couch and a love seat, they said were being moved like 1 or 2 inches every night. And then at the same time, objects, not only the papers, objects were still getting moved around the house when people weren't home. Now, when I was using my sources, I couldn't find a lot of specific dates, but the story says that the year that all this, the sources that I used said that the activity in the home started in about 1986, right after the Andrews' mother died. But now we're in 1987, but it kind of sucks because I can't say exactly how long this activity's been going on, because it's just 86, 87. It doesn't give months and dates and stuff like that, but it had at least been going on for a few months, and the activity inside the home was still going on. So during the time of 1987, The knocking was still going on, stuff was still being moved around the house, items would disappear and appear in different places or just disappear altogether, never to be seen again. But then the spirit got really, really crazy, because one night when the daughters were home alone, once again, which wasn't crazy uncommon because Brian was still working 2 jobs at the time, they said they heard a lot of noise coming from the basement. Like, it sounded like someone throwing stuff around, just like someone is down there throwing God knows what around the room. And when they got down there, when they finally got the courage to go down there after hearing all this noise, which is crazy to me because I'm not even like, ghosts out of everything paranormal might be the thing that I probably believe in the least now. But still, if I heard a bunch of noise coming from the basement and like stuff has been moved around and stuff like that, I would probably just leave the house. I don't want to know. But they gained the courage to go down in the basement, and when they got down there, they noticed a message written on the wall with what they described as blood. And the message said, "I'm in your room, come find me." Now, obviously the girls were terrified by this message, so much to the point that they ran out of their home across the street to another family's house. Now, I'm assuming this family was good friends with the Andrews because the other family let the girls right in the house. And begged the father of this family to call their father. And once the father of the other family got a hold of Brian, he put the girls on the phone, and the girls told them what they saw. Sorry. When Brian arrived home, he went in by himself to make sure everything was okay inside the house. And the first thing he did was go down to the basement. And the first thing he noticed when he got down there was the message written in blood was actually just wrote in ketchup. Now, obviously, the activity his daughters had been talking about had been going on for months at this point, and Brian never believed their stories. So obviously when he discovered this message was made with ketchup, which is something a child would do, would make a message out of ketchup saying it was blood, he was understandably furious about it because he's still the only one working a job, and he's working double the time, and he thinks his daughters are making up stories for attention as a weird way of grieving. So he basically told them to stop making it all up and just let him grieve like he wants to grieve, because he's still, like I said, he's been working this whole time. He hasn't really been able to grieve, and he's got his daughters, he believes, making all these stories up about ghosts inside the house, moving furniture around, destroying stuff, taking stuff off the counters, moving them around the house, as what he believes is a show. And to Brian's credit, after he tells the girls this, the activity pretty much ceases. There's a knock every so often on the walls, but they became pretty infrequent. Stuff stopped really being moved around the house, and the girls stopped telling Brian about anything. Now, the girls could have maybe still been hearing things or seeing things and just not telling Brian because he is telling them that they're faking it. But they didn't tell him anything after that. But after a few months, another message appeared. Unlike last time, though, this message was not found in the basement. This message was found inside of Annie's room, which is the 15-year-old daughter. And it was once again written in ketchup, and this message said, "I'm back, find me if you can." And just like last time, the girls were very, very terrified and ran across the street once again to the other family's house and had them call Brian. And by this time, Brian was just sick of it, and he was very reluctant to come home this time. But the girls pleaded with him to come home. And Brian did come home, and he wanted to check the house out. And instead of just checking the basement, he decided to check the entire house. The first room, however, he went into was Annie's room, where he did see the message. But after that, he must have had some sort of like sixth sense or even be creeped out himself, because he decided to check every room in the house. And the last one he checked was his own room. And when he walked into his own room, he came face to face with what had been causing all the activity the whole time. And what exactly Brian saw was no ghost, but a person. a boy. The boy that he saw was wearing his deceased wife's dress, her makeup, and he was wielding a hatchet. As soon as Brian walked into the room, the boy lunged at Brian. Brian managed to escape the boy and went back over to the house where his daughters were, and immediately called the police. Now, after about 20 minutes, the police arrived at the scene and did a thorough investigation of the house. And after about an hour of looking in the house, it is almost as if the boy vanished into thin air. The cops pretty much just said, oh, he probably ran off, he probably just left while we were getting over here. And they were pretty close to just wrapping up their investigation and leaving. But after one little extra look over, an officer noticed something very weird. In Annie's room, he noticed that she had this... I couldn't understand what they're saying like this. They said built-in cabinet, but it sounds more like a dresser that they're describing. But they say it's like the dresser is built into the wall, and it's like it came like that, like the dresser was part of the wall. But the officer noticed that there was a slight crack in between the dresser and the wall, and he decided to just check it out, and he pulled open the dresser, and he found the boy. And the boy was obviously arrested after this, but after doing another little search of where they found him, they discovered that the boy had probably been living in the house, the walls of the house, for over a year at that point. And he had he was pretty much going in and out of the compartments of the walls and in between the vents, and had peepholes all around the house to constantly spy on the family. Now, even though I like a lot of paranormal stuff like ghosts and aliens and cryptids and stuff like that, I don't find a lot of them too scary. But I'll tell you what I do find scary, and that's people, because we know people are real. And they have a lot more, I guess, ability. They have a better ability at actually hurting you and harming you than any spirits or stuff like that are going to. And this is one of the most horrifying stories I've read in a while. I knew about this story for quite a while, which is why I wanted to cover it, because it's one of my favorite true crime / ghost stories. But I'm not kidding when I said that I kind of hated reading all this, because when I get into a state of reading stuff like this, I like to put myself into the situation of like what it would be like. And pretty much for the last week that I've been thinking about this entire case, I've either had nightmares about home invaders, or I've been very nervous about someone breaking into the home right before I'm about to go to bed, which sucks. Yeah, I wasn't kidding in that part, by the way. I was legitimately pretty scared for the entire week that I was studying this whole thing. But what's nice is, at this point, those fears have kind of waned a little bit, and I haven't been dreaming about home invaders very much lately. But I have 2 videos currently in mind, and one of the things that I've been researching lately had me literally questioning my sanity at work the other day from me listening to certain things about it. So yeah, that should be a lot of fun. Once the boy was arrested and in custody, his name was revealed as David LaPlante. You know what's really funny about this part right here is the fact that when I go through and I edit my videos, I just listen to the whole video through, and parts like these where I think I need a little bit more context, I'll pop my little character, and I'm sure you've noticed over the last few videos if you've been watching them. It's funny that I just recorded that last part, the voiceover you just heard, where I said I had been studying this stuff for nearly a week at this point. But the best part is that right after I say that, I then say the wrong name of the person that I'm talking about. I said David LaPlante there. I meant to say Daniel LaPlante. I don't know if I had a typo in my script or I literally just read it wrong. But yeah, that's pretty embarrassing, but you know what? I'll just leave it in there anyways because it's funny. And that name's very interesting because Annie knew who Daniel was. And once again, Annie's the 15-year-old daughter. She knew who Daniel was. And not only did she know who he was, she had actually gone on a date with him. Now, the exact time of their date, like the date and time for their date, was not stated in any of my sources, which makes all this pretty complicated. But the only thing that I do know for sure is that the date happened after Annie's mother had died. It seemed like it'd only been a few days or maybe a few weeks after she had died. And the reason they went on a date was because Daniel had somehow got a hold of Annie's phone number and had called her one night and said that he had gotten Annie's number from a friend from school. And they stayed on the phone for a few hours, just chatting back and forth, and this whole time, Daniel talked himself up, saying that he was, quote, tall, blonde, and athletic, and Annie seemed pretty interested. The entire time that they were on the phone, Annie said that he was very soft-spoken and pretty kind to her. So she agreed once he asked her if she wanted to go on a date, and she agreed. And the day that they were supposed to go on their date, Daniel showed up at her door, and the second Annie opened the door, she realized Daniel was nothing like he described. Now, Daniel's descriptors of himself, remember, are tall, blonde, and athletic, and Annie described him once she opened the door as dark-haired, scrawny, and wearing filthy clothes. I'll probably throw up a picture over here, and you can clearly see that he is none of the things that he described himself as. Even though he pretty much, well, I don't want to say pretty much, he did lie exactly how he looked, Annie still decided to give him a chance because they did actually have a pretty good conversation over the phone. Unfortunately, though, she would soon regret this decision of giving him a chance, because almost immediately, I think they said, they went out to a ice cream shop pretty much, and almost as soon as they sat down, Daniel started asking really inappropriate questions about Annie's mother, who had just recently passed away. And the inappropriate questions he was asking was about Annie's mother's cancer. He was asking questions about the cancer she had and how sick she really was. So obviously, Annie was trying to do anything to get out of this date. And at one point, Daniel got up to use the restroom, and Annie decided to just get out of there. She just left, and the whole time on the way back to her house, Daniel was trying to call her, but she refused to return any of his calls. Very smart. Soon after the date is when it's suspected that Daniel infiltrated the house and started hiding in the walls and pretending to be a ghost and just all around just being a horrifying nightmare. Okay, now we're going into October of 1987, shortly after Daniel was arrested. He was charged with breaking and entering in the Andrews home, but since he was only 16 at the time when he did this, he got a very light sentence, and only a few weeks after he was arrested and charged, he was back out on the streets. Now we are in October of 1987, which was pretty much right after Daniel was arrested, and he got charged with breaking and entering into the Andrews home. But since he was only 16 at the time of this crime, he got a very light sentence, and less than a month later, he was back out on the streets of Massachusetts. Unfortunately, though, Daniel's story does not end there, because on December 1st of 1987, a little over a month after he had been No, this would probably be only a couple weeks after he got released, but this was only about a month and a half after he was charged for the breaking and entering. But Daniel decided to break into the Gustafson household. I should also mention this as well, is that before he had even broke into the Andrews home and started living in their walls, Daniel already had a record of breaking and entering and shoplifting, stealing, he was already doing these kinds of things. This just didn't come out of nowhere. He had a history of doing stuff like this already. But what he did in this case is beyond what it should have ever became or even should ever be for anyone ever. But anyways, December 1st, 1987, Daniel breaks into the Gustafson household. At the time when he broke in, Priscilla, who was the mother of two children, Abigail and William, were present in the home. And Priscilla, also being the mother of the two kids, was pregnant at the time. Almost as soon as Daniel broke in, he assaulted, if you catch my drift, there's a word I can't say on YouTube, but you probably get what I'm saying. He assaulted her and shot her twice in the head with a gun. I mean, obviously with a gun. Shortly after he had killed Priscilla with the gun, he turned his attention towards the two children, both of which he drowned in the upstairs bathroom of the house. A few hours later, after the attack and the murder of these three, Andrew Gustafson, who was the husband of Priscilla and the father of the two children, arrived at the home and discovered the horror that Daniel had left inside his home. He immediately contacted the police, and very shortly after this, the police suspected Daniel because, like I said, he had only been out for a couple weeks and did this, and they also suspected him because he had obviously had a history of breaking and entering, so this fit his MO, and immediately went to his home, and since he had just gotten released, they had pretty probable cause, entered his home, and when they entered his bedroom, they found the gun that was used to kill Priscilla, and he was arrested immediately. Now, in early 1988, the trial for Daniel LaPlante began. And of course, with so much evidence on the scene of the crime and in Daniel's house in his room, the trial was a pretty standard cut and dried sort of trial. But during the trial, Daniel had mentioned to the judge that he had suffered a very traumatic childhood, where he stated that his father abused him, which you probably know what I mean, but I can't outright say it. And for this abuse, Daniel eventually went to a psychiatrist to help deal with the trauma of this abuse, but sadly, his psychiatrist abused him as well. Now, there is pretty much no way to know if Daniel's telling the truth. He had a history of breaking and entering, stealing, and then, of course, a tragic triple homicide. And he's more than likely, I would say almost 95% sure, he's a pathological liar, as most of these people are. Now, if it did actually happen, that is pretty tragic because all of this stuff could have probably been avoided if he had gotten the help he needed. But that still does not justify his actions, obviously. I mean, he tried to go to a psychiatrist and then got abused by the psychiatrist that was supposed to help him with his trauma and stuff like that. But like I said, there's no way to know this. Plus, also, there's no way to know this because this man hid in the walls of a family's home for a year and tormented this family, used psychological, fear just to mess with them, and then was clearly wielding a hatchet in the father's room, was planning to murder them. If he would not have killed... I'm trying to think of how to word this. Basically, I'm saying that if he had not gotten caught, if the father hadn't gotten away from Daniel when he discovered him in his room, he would have likely killed the whole family of the Andrews. He wanted to do this in a way. He wanted this so bad. And the more I thought about it just now, the more I thought this was a deeply personal thing because of, I guess, the rejection from Annie that he got. But like I said, he had already been breaking into people's homes, stealing their stuff, and then the second he gets out, he doesn't go for the Andrews again. If it was really about the rejection part of it and the anger of that, he would have went after them. But he went after a completely random family. He just broke into a house and killed 3 people, including 2 children and a pregnant mother. He didn't have a will. I mean, he had a will to do this, but he had no rhyme or reason to do it. He was just doing it to do it. So, could it have probably been avoided if he got the help he needed? Yes, but in no way is it at all justifiable, the actions that he committed. And obviously the jury and the judge agreed with this thought, and he was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences. And what's interesting is that the judge told Daniel that if Massachusetts had the death penalty, Daniel would have gotten it. But at the time when this was going on, Massachusetts had outlawed the death penalty at the time. Now, I guess sometime in 2017, Massachusetts had a new sort of law or system in place for how minors are charged in, I guess, adult cases. But at the time, Daniel, when he was finally charged for this murder, he was 17 years old. So he thought that he should get it out. And basically what I think they were trying to say, I was trying to read about what this I was trying to read about what this law exactly means, and from what I can tell, it's basically, I guess if you're old enough in Massachusetts at the time when Daniel did this, if it's such a heinous crime, you can be charged as an adult. But I guess in 2017, they had a change in their law where you cannot get charged as an adult unless you're 18 or older. So since he was 17 at the time of this murder, in 2019 he tried to file for parole, and cited that his sentence should also be reduced since he was a minor at the time. And obviously for good reason, over the people he murdered and all his history of every heinous thing he's done, it was immediately denied. And he had also received, when he was applying for this parole, and what played into the fact that it got denied so quickly, was the fact that Daniel was required to go through another psychological evaluation. And when the psychological evaluation came back, the psychiatrist who tested him said, or the psychiatrist that reviewed him and studied him pretty much said, he is a man devoid of any emotion or feelings, which is not surprising for a person like this. So obviously his parole was denied. And something else was, I didn't understand quite what this meant. I don't know how courts work and stuff like this, but I saw something that said that the judge resentenced his life sentences. I don't know exactly what that means. If you know what that means, please let me know in the comments, because I have no idea what that means. So yeah, Daniel is in prison where he will likely spend the rest of his days. I'll throw up a picture over here of what he looks like. Time has not been very kind to him, and I doubt prison has either. Considering the fact that he killed 2 children and a pregnant woman, I'm surprised that the man is still alive, to be honest, in prison. Yeah, that's pretty much the end of this story. Like I said, this is one of my favorite stories ever, and I didn't really get the chance to really go in depth with it until I started doing this YouTube thing. I knew about the story. Me and my uncle had talked about it a few times. And we thought it was really cool because it turns from a paranormal type story into a classic true crime story. So that makes it really fun, and I will definitely be covering more true crime things in the future. How exactly I'll do that, I don't know, because I know YouTube's not a huge fan of you using the kill word and the murder word. I can kind of get away with it right now because I don't have a monetized channel, so they can't even demonetize my videos. So yeah, right now I just want to take a few minutes to talk about future things coming up with the channel. This story's pretty much over. If you're not interested in the future of this channel or things like that, feel free to click away. I really appreciate you watching this far into the video, and I hope you enjoyed it. But for people that want a little bit of an update about what's going on coming up soon, I'm thinking about starting a Patreon pretty soon. I know a lot of small creators start Patreons and stuff like that just to get a little bit of financial help with certain things. When I make it, I have one made already, but it's not like ready yet because I don't know how to set up like the membership tiers and stuff like that. I got to think about what I want to offer for Patreon and stuff like that. This is all pretty new to me, so I don't know how to do a lot of this stuff. I'm just kind of trying to learn as I go. But I've been enjoying it though, trying to learn all these things as I go. But Patreon should be coming up soon, and the Patreon, I have a few ideas for what I'm going to do with some of the membership levels. I probably won't start a Patreon until I get to about 100 subscribers, I think, because then I'll have a pretty decently sized community. But there's certain things, Conspiracy theories, I keep saying I'm gonna do one soon, but the one I want to do is gonna take a lot of time to research, and it'll probably pretty much just become a background research thing for right now, so it might take a little while for the conspiracy theory I have in mind to do a video on to come out fully and stuff like that. But I know there is certain things I absolutely cannot talk about on this platform, or it could like get my channel terminated. Some conspiracy theories, especially some of the ones that I want to talk about. But I think I'm gonna make some Patreon only videos for stuff like that, like stuff that I'm too nervous to put on this platform pretty much. And eventually, once I get enough people, I want to start doing Q&As, and even I want to hear your all suggestions of what I should do on the channel, like what topics you all want me to talk about. So yeah, I know I keep saying at the end of videos I'm gonna do a conspiracy theory next, but it's been kind of weird because the first one I want to cover, like I said, is going to take a lot of time. The next video I make should be another cryptid video. It's been about, this should be 3 videos in a row that aren't about cryptids. I kind of want to space out the cryptid videos. They're going to take a long time, and the next one I'm going to do, I'm really excited about. I just got a book today to use as kind of research material. Do you ever really just want to yell at yourself? Because that's what I wanted to do after listening to what I just said there. Right after I just said that I need to stop saying that I'm going to do a conspiracy theory next, I say that I'm going to do a cryptid next. I need to just stop saying things that I'm going to do next, because the cryptid I'm currently working on is going to take a little bit of time. It's like I said, I had just bought a book for this, and I've started reading this book, and I'm realizing between reading the book and having to write a script, getting all my sources together, stuff like that, it's going to take a little bit too long to be my next video. But I do have a good idea for I'm going to put a video out in between this one and the next cryptid video as kind of like a buffer. But the buffer is not going to be like a half-made video, because I found a topic I really want to talk about, and it's something I've really got into the last week, because this recording's kind of old. Today's just the first day that I've really got to sit down and edit it. But there will be a video that's not a cryptid. I'm not going to say what the next video is, because then something will happen and I don't end up making it. So you know what? There's going to be a video between them, just trust me. But it'll be a good video. I'm not going to slack on it. I want to do it. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I know you all are going to enjoy it. I really hope you all did enjoy this video. It was a lot of fun to research, even though I did lose some sleep a few nights and had some crazy nightmares about home invaders. And if you all are the same, I'm sorry if I accidentally did that to you all. But it was worth it. I really did enjoy making this video. I did, I already said that in the beginning, the fact that I bought a tablet to work on this stuff with extra time. So I am, it is taking a long time for me to get these videos out, but that's for pretty good reason. I don't want to like rush my work, but at the same time, I gotta work my other job, which actually does make me money to be able to buy things to do this stuff for, because obviously I use Microsoft Word to write my scripts on, so that costs money. I had to buy all this stuff to set up this whole setup I got. The tablet, I had to buy that to help me do extra work. So I gotta work a lot to make this work as well, but it's so worth it. And the fact that you all enjoy these videos so much makes it even more worth it, because I just get to come here, I get to rant about stuff that I like to talk about, and you all seem to enjoy it. So that makes it all worth it, and I really do appreciate all of you. And yeah, I don't know what day this video will come out. I was gonna try to stick to a upload schedule, but with uncertainty on how long topics take and stuff like that, I don't want to, especially so early, I don't want to put that sort of pressure on myself to get that stuff done. But yeah, I really do hope you all enjoyed this video. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, whatever you want to do. Yeah, expect another video within the next few weeks. It should be a lot of fun. thank you all so much for watching.
Hey, I just wanted to come here at the end to say thank you once again for watching the video, but just real quickly, I swear this will be the last thing, go follow my Twitter and my Instagram. My Twitter is cryptid_comfort, I'll throw it up on the screen here, and my Instagram is just at cryptidcomfort, no spaces, no underscores, no nothing like that. I'll throw that up on screen as well, and I'll probably put it in the description of this video. But with that, thank you again so much for watching the video, and I hope you have a great day.